Greetings, fellow readers. Today, for this video, we're going to be doing a tier list. I'm going to be ranking books I read in high school. These are only books that were required for us to read. I'm not including books where I had an assignment, but I had the choice of which book I read, if that makes sense. These are just books that were part of the curriculum. We have 10 books here, ordered in what I hope is the order I read them. Hopefully, I'm not leaving out any books, and hopefully, this is the general order in which I read them. Maybe a few are flip-flopped here. It's been a while. But anyway, let's just get into it, huh? First up, we have Romeo and Juliet. I can say going in, I was very excited to finally start reading Shakespeare. This was my first Shakespeare I read, and at the time I really liked it. But after reading more Shakespeare and getting better acquainted with his style, I feel like Romeo and Juliet, mm, decent, maybe into the very good, but I'm gonna put Romeo and Juliet decent here. I mean, it's like probably Shakespeare's most known play. I feel like if you ask middle schoolers and high schoolers a name a Shakespeare play, it's going to be Romeo and Juliet. I feel like it deserves maybe a bit more just for iconic status. Maybe it's the fact that it was the first Shakespeare I read and I was still trying to grasp the language, the style. Maybe there was some sort of disconnect there, but I still feel it's on the weaker end of Shakespeare's plays, so I'm gonna leave it here at decent. Both of these books, Romeo and Juliet and Of Mice and Men, I've read it in freshman year. I much preferred Of Mice and Men. It's tempting. I'm tempted to put it up here. For now, I'm gonna put it in the very good, and I might etch it into the best by the end of the video. This one's kind of special to me because it was one of the first classic literature books where I guessed a very important part of the book. I could see the parallels between the two main characters, their relationship, and the relationship of two other characters, and I could see where it was going. Throughout chunks of the book, we would be given assignments showing our knowledge of the book, and I guess I had predicted the ending, basically. It was a fond academic memory for me. This book, very enjoyable to read for me, even though it's quite a downer. This was one of the books where I read ahead of our scheduled reading, and I don't regret that. I think part of the love I have for any of these books can be attributed to the amount of analysis time I was given for these books. Typically, I would just steamroll through a book and then analyze the book after I'd done reading. This style of analyzing, where you'd read chunks of the book, then analyze it, then chunks, and analyze it, I think that helped a lot of enjoyment in some of these. And maybe Of Mice and Men got a bit of that, but I still think it's very chock full of theme. I like the characters. Also, a nice glimpse of the time period, the Great Depression and Dust Bowl and all that. I wonder what the reputation of this book is for the representation of mental illness and mental health. I'm not sure about that, but I don't think that's the point. We're gonna get to a book that kind of veers into that direction a bit later. But yeah, I think Of Mice and Men. I'm trying to talk myself into putting it into best, but I'm gonna leave it here at very good, and maybe by the end it will sneak up there. Alright, Taming of the Shrew is gonna be tricky. I like it more than Romeo and Juliet. I think it's gotta stay here, and this is kind of reaffirming my position on Romeo and Juliet. Taming of the Shrew, I would say a weaker comedy from Shakespeare. Like I prefer Much Ado About Nothing and um I guess Midsummer's Night's Dream. Tempest, is that kind of a comedy? It's more like a drama. Like I wouldn't Tempest is not really a tragedy, but it's not really a comedy either. It's very weird, The Tempest. But I'm getting sidetracked. Yeah, Taming of the Shrew. I mean, it is funny. Like And I think my interpretation of it is Shakespeare poking fun at kind of gender norms. That was my takeaway first reading this. I haven't reread it. Some of these I do need to do a reread. All of these Shakespeare plays as well, except for no, okay, never mind. Yeah, all of these Shakespeare plays, we watched the movie a bit. Actually, I think all of these books, save for two, we watched like clips of the movie as we were going through, and in some cases we watched the whole film. And the the Taming of the Shrew, we watched a play, an actual play of it, which was different than Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, where we watched actual theatrical movies. Reading Taming of the Shrew after Romeo and Juliet, I was much more clear on the language and the verbiage, so it was much more easier to digest. And I think Taming of the Shrew is maybe one of his most digestible plays. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I do put Romeo and Juliet slightly higher just for impact. Like, this wasn't my intent, but in my brain, I'm thinking which one of these is more suitable on a high school curriculum, if that makes sense. Like, if I had to pick one of these two to put, if I was a teacher and I had to make a curriculum of books, I had a list of books that I could have my students read. I'd pick Romeo and Juliet before Taming of the Shrew, just because I feel like Romeo and Juliet is more culturally important than Taming of the Shrew. Although Taming of the Shrew does have a lot of messages that you can glean from it, um, and probably more than Romeo and Juliet. Although I guess the conversation of love and lust, the conversation between love and lust, is very important. It's probably a very important depiction to share with high schoolers. So mm, I think I talked myself into putting Romeo and Juliet above Taming the Shrew. That's crazy. But yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. Next up, we have a book that when it was brought up in class, I had never heard of this, and I think it's the only one I had no inkling of what it was before I went into it. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I'm going to put it here at decent. I at the end here because I really don't know what to think of this book. I don't remember a lot of it. When I read it, I was kind of all right. A tad spoiler for the beginning for this book. Uh, there is a death of a dog, and that kind of threw me off. Like it kind of upset me. I was not prepared for a death of a dog, and it kind of just kind of upset the the balance of the book for me. And then I kind of fell out. Like there were characters I liked, and then ended up not liking them for various reasons. It is a mystery, and I do like mysteries, and I was intrigued by the mystery, but it just it sat weird with me. It is a the main character, kind of a representation of autism. And I've heard both ends of the argument of if it's good or bad representation of autism. Myself, probably having level one autism, what is described in layman's terms as high functioning autism. And I did connect with the main character in some aspects, um, but in others I felt there was a disconnect there. I probably should reread this one. Out of all of these, this one's probably the one I need to reread the most because I feel like I just don't remember a lot of it. I'm gonna keep Curious Incident at the end of decent. I would put it in meh, but I don't want to be. I don't remember the book too much, so I'm gonna leave it here in decent. Next up is The Great Gatsby, and if you've seen my previous video, you already know this is one of my favorite books of all time. And if someone were to ask me, you know, buckle down and pick an answer, what's your favorite? I'd probably pick Great Gatsby. I love this book. It was one of my favorite books to pick through, just the themes, the character relationships, the hidden messages with American Dream, uh, Old Money, New Money, all that stuff. It was a perfect concoction for me. The only problem I had with the book was it was so short. All these books, we'd read like 3 chapters here. Next week we'd read 3 chapters and talk about it in class. Great Gatsby. We were supposed to read 3 chapters in that first week, and I ended up finishing the book. And so every time we'd go on to a new section of the book, I would have to reread it and refresh myself, just so I don't accidentally bring up something from chapter 7 when we're talking about chapter 6. There's just a lot going on in this condensed book, and it just ties together so effortlessly, it seems. Yeah, and I feel, I have the inkling I was the only person in that class that enjoyed this book. I can't really describe how much this book, I don't know, connected with me, even though on surface level, I feel like none of these things should connect to me. The time period isn't my favorite. The characters are kind of, uh, no one's really likable. Like, I guess Nick in his own way and Gatsby in his own way, but you're like just surrounded by these snobby d bags and rich folk. But it's like, so it's kind of entertaining seeing classes and how different levels of class interact, and then these characters are kind of well fleshed out to bring those specific themes to light. And I feel like it's a masterpiece. And whenever the conversation comes up of the great American novel, I say Great Gatsby. Of Nice and Men is up there as well. I'm tempted to put it up in there. I'm still gonna leave it here because there is a gap for me between these two. But yeah, Great Gatsby, one of the best pieces of literature. Next up, we have The Crucible, and I'm curious. I think I'm going to go. This is personal. Personal preference. I do like it more than Romeo and Juliet, but not as much as Mice and Men. A nice depiction of mass hysteria using a historical fulcrum point in the Salem witch trials, kind of an adaptation of that, and even draws parallels to like real life stories from that time. I guess there are themes of redemption, I guess, with John Proctor, um, of faith, of course, with the whole religious aspect, and I guess the main focus is mass hysteria and how much mass hysteria can take over. I just enjoyed reading it. It's kind of almost like a horror story in which you're seeing these characters get picked off. But yeah, an enjoyable read. I wouldn't say it's as important as these Shakespeare plays, but personally, I did enjoy it, and so it's gonna stay here and very good. A great play. There are a lot of plays actually. I'm surprised. Next up is The Things They Carried. Tim O'Brien. Kind of a connected stories about a soldier and his platoon going through the horrors of Vietnam War. Um, Very interesting, and I can't remember if I had actually known anything about this book before reading it, but it was a fascinating read, and I would say I'm glad it was put on the curriculum, even though it was not my favorite. I'm going to put it here in very good. It is a great depiction of the horrors of war, and then just thematic of the things they carried. Yeah, emotional baggage. If someone wants a depiction of war and what it does to people, I think this is a great book. But of course, being what it is not as enjoyable a read as some of these other ones for obvious reasons. It's kind of based off of Tim O'Brien's own experiences with war, which helps with that connection. I just think if you haven't read this and you are interested, I would recommend it. It is a great depiction of the Vietnam War. All right, here we have Catcher in the Rye. On a personal enjoyment level, I have to put it in meh because I did not enjoy reading this book. I I will admit it is a classic, and I would still venture to put it out into a high school curriculum for reading. But on a personal note, I did not enjoy this book. I don't connect to Holden basically at all. And typically that's not a issue for me. I can still go through a character's journey while still like just it's a nice exercise in looking through other lenses. Just this one did not click with me. On a objective scale, this would be much higher, but just personally did not click for me. Catcher in the Rye. Maybe I do need to do a reread of it, but my first experience was not an amazing one, so I'm not itching to get back to it. But yeah, Catcher in the Rye. Hamlet, very nice. Again, if you've seen my other video, you know Hamlet is one of my favorite pieces of literature. Definitely my favorite Shakespeare play, and I had a lot of fun diving into it, dissecting the Alas Poor Yorick's
monologue,
dissecting the king's prayer
soliloquy,
when Hamlet's getting ready to kill him, but his uncle is praying. Not to mention one of the only tragedies that I felt it didn't cheat me. Like, I guess I didn't feel cheated in Romeo and Juliet, but it's also like I already knew I already knew what was gonna happen going into Hamlet and then seeing a tragedy. It's nice that when they tell you which one of Hamlet's Hamlet's plays, it's nice when they tell you when Shakespeare's plays are comedies or tragedies, so you can like kind of mentally prepare yourself when you go in. And I was mentally prepared, and the crescendo, the climax, it was everything I was expecting and more. Everything tied together, everything made sense in my mind. I mean, I guess if I had to nitpick, it was very elaborate plan with the poisoned rapiers. Were they rapiers? Pretty sure they were rapiers. Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. And I had a real great time reading this Hamlet. Definitely best of literature. And as I'm looking up this, I think I am going to sneak Of Mice and Men into the best category here. Yeah, that feels right. And lastly, here we have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This one's interesting because this one, out of all of these, actually, now I think about it, did not watch any movie for Catcher in the Rye. I don't even know if there's a movie for this one, and we did not watch anything for The Things They Carried. Everything else, we either watched the movie, watched clips, or in the case of Taming the Shrew, a play rendition. Uh, this one was definitely, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was definitely the best movie that I had watched of all of these. And I think maybe the movie is influencing this, but I am going to put One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in very good. I'm actually gonna sneak it up here. I think personally, I do like the Crucible a bit more. I don't really know why, because on an objective level, I'd say One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is very, very good and important, and has a great antagonist in Nurse Ratched. But it's weird. It's almost like Great Gatsby in that the focus character is not the main character. You're seeing through the eyes of someone else. But I will say, Chief Bromden is more of a. There's more going on with Chief Bromden than Nick in Great Gatsby, if that makes sense. There's more. He has more thematic ties in there, where I feel like Nick is just narrator. He's just man observing things. I mean, Nick does have his own kind of character arc. I'm kind of giving Nick a bit short end of the stick there, but I do feel Chief Bromden does have more of a central theme going on with him. Multiple themes, actually. Native American aspect and the patient aspect, as opposed to McMurphy, who's more of a rebel. Chief is more kind of already. What am I trying to say? He's already kind of integrated into the system. Now I'm just gonna leave it there. Yeah, very good book, and definitely out of these, the best adaptation I saw. Did like the Of Mice and Men adaptation. Um, I forget his name, but he plays Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. I forgot his name. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah, that's the one I watched. We watched uh, the Kenneth Branagh version of Hamlet, which was good, but we did not watch the whole thing. We only watched clips, and then later on, I had watched it for myself. It is a good movie and probably the second best. The Great Gatsby adaptation, it's fine. It's fine. Being my favorite book, I was hoping for more, I guess. But it is what it is. I mean, it's not terrible. Only saw clips of the Crucible adaptation. Um, and yeah, we watched the Leonardo DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet, and then a stage play of Taming of the Shrew. But yeah, this has been a tier list of books I read in high school. Uh, yeah, I should say books I read for high school because I read a lot of books in high school, and this list would have been far too long. Yeah, hopefully I didn't ramble for too long. Hopefully you all enjoyed. And with that being said, until next time, farewell, fellow readers.